Caroline had spent 6 years caring for Ash, a rescued bobcat, at the remote wildlife rehabilitation center she called home. But nothing prepared her for the day Ash stopped eating, began stumbling, and was diagnosed with a rare, untreatable neurological disease. After months of tests, specialists, and sleepless nights, every expert agreed the kindest thing left to do was a peaceful goodbye. As the veterinarian approached with the final injection, Caroline gave him his favorite foods and knelt beside him for one last moment. The bobcat refused to let go, holding her like a child clinging to its mother. Caroline had never seen anything like this. Something in Ash's eyes told her he wasn't ready to give up. But in his final moments, an urgent message from 2,000 miles away told her that the fatal diagnosis might actually be a mistake. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The high desert air was so still it seemed to be holding its breath. Caroline matched its stillness, sitting on the packed earth just outside the wire mesh wall of the enclosure. On the other side, Ash, the bobcat who was more a part of her own soul than she usually admitted, lay on a flat, sun-warmed rock. He wasn't watching the scrub jays darting through the juniper. His gaze was fixed on her. For 6 years, the remote Arizona Wildlife Rehabilitation Center had been their shared world. Caroline had been a junior rehabber, barely out of college when the call came in. A landowner who had found a single half-starved kitten, its eyes still blue-hazy with infancy, clinging to its dead mother on the side of a highway. She had been the one to sit up all night, pushing drops of formula past its tiny, hissing teeth. She had been the one who cleaned the emaciated, spotted body, whispering promises. "You're safe now, Ash. I've got you." Ash, named for the gray, ashy dust he'd been found in, survived. But the early starvation and separation had left their mark. He'd been deemed non-releasable by the state, a creature caught between the wild and the human world. He grew not into a pet, but into a magnificent 30-pound wild ambassador. He was muscled, sharp-eyed, and possessed a wild dignity that Caroline respected above all else. He tolerated other staff, but he trusted Caroline. He allowed her to clean his enclosure, to present his enrichment, and, on rare, quiet mornings, to sit just close enough that he could press his head into her offered hand, rumbling a purr that sounded like a small, idling engine. That engine had been faltering for 3 agonizing months. It started with a subtle lack of appetite, then a hesitation before he leaped to his favorite perch. Soon he was stumbling, his powerful hind legs seeming to forget their purpose. Caroline, with her network of rehabbers and wildlife vets, had thrown every resource she had at the problem. Local blood panels came back confusing. X-rays were clean. They sent samples to the state lab, then to a specialist at UC Davis, then to another in Texas. The consensus, cobbled together over frantic emails and solemn Zoom calls, was devastating. All signs pointed to a rare, rapidly progressing neurological condition, something akin to a prion disease, untraceable, untreatable, and invariably fatal. The kindest, most ethical option, the one that every wildlife protocol dictated, was humane euthanasia. The words felt like acid in Caroline's throat. She had argued, pleaded for one more test, one more week. But when Ash fell from his low rock and didn't have the strength or will to get up, she knew to keep him alive now was for her, not for him. It was a selfish act, and her love for him had to be bigger than her own grief. She scheduled the appointment with Dr. Maria Reyes, their longtime local vet, who had cried with Caroline when they made the final decision. And now, the morning had come. Caroline had arrived at the center before the sun, the beams of her truck cutting through the pre-dawn purple. She was going to give him a perfect final day. She opened the door to his main enclosure, letting him move into his large open-air run. A quarter-acre of fenced-in desert dotted with boulders, dead logs, and brush. He walked slowly, his body thin under his thick, spotted pelt. He sniffed the wind, his tufted ears twitching, and watched the distant tree line. But he didn't try to hunt the lizards that skittered past. For breakfast, she brought him the most expensive gamey quail and a fresh rabbit, his absolute favorites. He sniffed them, licked the quail once, and then turned away. He walked back to Caroline, who sat on the ground and pushed his head weakly into her hands. He didn't want food. He wanted her. She spent hours just sitting with him, stroking the rough, beautiful fur between his ears, memorizing the precise pattern of spots over his shoulders. She whispered the story of his rescue, of the first time he'd chuffed at her, of the time he'd stolen a work glove and batted it around for an hour. "You've been the best boy, Ash," she whispered, her voice cracking. "The very best. I am so sorry. I love you. It's time to rest. You don't have to hurt anymore." He pressed his head harder into her palm and rumbled that deep, exhausted purr. At 11 o'clock, the crunch of gravel signaled the arrival of Dr. Reyes's truck. The air in the center, usually bustling with the sounds of feeding and cleaning, felt heavy and suffocated. Dr. Reyes and her technician Ben emerged, their faces masks of somber professionalism. They carried a small, sterile case of medications. They prepared in the center's small exam room. "Are you ready, Caroline?" Maria asked gently. Caroline couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears already tracing paths through the dust on her cheeks. She led them to Ash's indoor den. He was lying on a soft, padded floor, his breathing shallow. "We'll give him the sedative first," Dr. Reyes explained, her voice low as she filled a syringe. "It'll just put him to sleep. He won't feel a thing. He'll just be peaceful." Caroline knelt on the padded floor. Go say goodbye," Maria said, giving her a moment. "Okay, buddy," Caroline choked out, crawling closer. "This is it. I'm right here. I won't leave you." She stroked his back, her hand shaking. "I love you, Ash. Thank you. Thank you for everything." Ash lifted his head. He looked past her, at Dr. Reyes approaching with the syringe. He looked back at Caroline. Then, with a surge of strength that hadn't been there for weeks, he did something he had never done before. He pushed himself up onto his unsteady front legs, lunged forward, and wrapped both paws around Caroline's shoulders. He buried his face against her neck, his rough chin hooked over her collarbone. It wasn't a gentle nuzzle. It was a clumsy, desperate, possessive embrace. He held her, his claws carefully retracted, and let out a low, shaky groan. Caroline froze, her heart shattering into a million pieces. A sob ripped from her chest as she instinctively wrapped her own arms around his spotted body, feeling the knobs of his spine. "Oh, Dios," Dr. Reyes whispered, her hand stopping midair. The syringe wavered. Ben, the technician, just stared, his mouth open. The moment stretched, a wild bobcat, on the verge of death, hugging his caretaker goodbye. The air in the room crackled with an emotion so raw, so primal, that both women froze. Dr. Reyes's hand was shaking so badly she had to lower it. She couldn't do it. Not like this. Before she could make up her mind, The door to the exam room burst open. It was Ben, who had slipped out moments before, unnoticed in the drama. He wasn't breathless. He was frantic. Shoving his smartphone forward, the screen lit up. "Dr. Reyes, stop!" he yelled, his voice cracking. "You have to read this. Now. It's from Dr. Thorne at the Appalachian Institute. He just got the final labs we forwarded last week." Dr. Reyes stared, confused. "Thorne? We sent those files 10 days ago." "What?" "He was at a field conference. He just got back, just saw the email, read it." Maria snatched the phone. Caroline was still on the floor, Ash still clinging to her, though his strength was fading. She looked up, her vision blurred by tears, not daring to comprehend. She watched Maria's face. The vet's eyes scanned the email, her brow furrowed. Her lips moved, reading silently. Then her eyes widened. Her head snapped up, her expression one of pure, unadulterated shock. He thinks we're wrong," Maria whispered, her voice trembling. "He says he's seen this twice before, in black bears, not a bobcat, but the presentation. He says the primary tests are notorious for false positives in young carnivores." "What?" Caroline's voice was a rasp. Ash slumped against her, exhausted from his effort. "He doesn't think it's neurological," Maria said, her voice gaining a wild, dizzying speed. "He thinks it's a severe, systemic fungal infection, a rare Aspergillus strain that mimics the symptoms, right down to the protein markers on the initial blood work. He says, do not euthanize. This is treatable." The atmosphere in the room, thick with grief and finality, vaporized. It was replaced by a sharp electric shock of something. It wasn't hope, it was too fragile, too sudden. It was a fragile, dizzying chance. "Treatable?" Caroline breathed. The word felt foreign. "How? How does he know?" "He needs to run a specialized test," Maria said, reading from the phone. "A cerebral spinal fluid tap and a specific PCR panel they developed at his facility. He's in Tennessee. We'd have to get Ash to him." In an instant, the sorrow was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp resolve. Caroline gently eased Ash back down to the bedding. He was fading again, his eyes half closed. She stood up, her entire body vibrating. "Then we get him to Tennessee," Caroline said. "Caroline, it's cross-country," Maria said, already switching from vet to logistician. "He's a Category 4 animal. The permit's from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, APHIS. "Then we get the permits," Caroline said, her voice iron. "You have a specialist, Dr. Elias Thorne, telling you this is a mistake. Put him on speaker, I'll call wildlife authorities. Ben, get a transport crate, the reinforced one. We're not losing him." The next 12 hours were a blur of high-stakes bureaucracy. Caroline, Dr. Reyes, and the now mythical Dr. Thorne on a three-way call, battling through red tape. They explained to a bewildered USFWS official that, yes, they needed an emergency interstate transport permit for a bobcat for a life-saving, non-standard procedure. Dr. Thorne, with the weight of the Appalachian Wildlife Research Institute behind him, was a godsend. He faxed letters, he made calls, he pulled strings. By 5 p.m., they had a temporary permit and a booked spot on a cargo flight out of Phoenix. Not in the main hold, but in a pressurized, temperature-controlled compartment used for transporting sensitive animals. Exhausted but resolute, Caroline finally had a moment to breathe while Ben and Dr. Reyes organized the medical supplies. Intravenous fluids, supportive medications, and the vet-approved sedatives for travel. She called her mother, babbling a quick, tearful explanation. Then she phoned her best friend, Kelly. Kelly, a park ranger who lived 2 hours away, picked up on the second ring. "Hey, C, how'd it go?" Her voice was soft with dread. "He's still here," Caroline sobbed, the day's terror finally breaking through. "He's still here, Kel, but we have to fly to Tennessee tonight. There's a chance." There was a pause. Then, "What's the flight number? I'll meet you at the gate in Phoenix. You're not doing this alone." "Kelly, you can't—" "Already packing," Kelly said, and hung up. By 10 p.m., they were at the cargo terminal at Sky Harbor. Kelly had beaten her there, her truck stocked with thermoses of coffee and protein bars. Together, they supervised the loading of Ash's reinforced travel crate. He was sedated, sleeping, but his breathing was steady. The flight was a sleepless, surreal purgatory. Caroline and Kelly sat in the main cabin, staring at the flight map. Every time the plane hit turbulence, Caroline's heart leaped into her throat. She kept a small, battery-operated monitor that Dr. Reyes had given her, linked to a sensor in Ash's crate. She stared at the tiny, fluctuating numbers of his heart rate and oxygen saturation as if she could keep him alive by sheer force of will. They landed in Charlotte, North Carolina, just after dawn, the air thick, green, and humid. A world away from their dry desert. A pre-arranged medical transport van was waiting. They loaded Ash and began the final, winding 3-hour drive up into the misty mountains of Tennessee to the Appalachian Wildlife Research Institute. The clinic was nestled beside a quiet, glassy lake, surrounded by woods so dense they seemed to swallow sound. It was calm, quiet, and felt more like a retreat than a hospital. A man in hiking pants and a fleece vest was waiting on the steps. He was tall, with a kind, weathered face and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Caroline, I'm Elias Thorne," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "You made good time. Let's get him inside." Inside, the clinic was state-of-the-art. Dr. Thorne's team moved with quiet efficiency, transferring Ash from the crate to a large, comfortable holding pen in the treatment area. Dr. Thorne examined Ash with practiced, gentle hands, his focus absolute. "You were right to come," he said, listening to Ash's heart. "His symptoms are a textbook mimic. Some rare fungal spores in your desert soil. They get inhaled, and in a compromised or unlucky animal, they cross the blood-brain barrier. It creates lesions that look identical to a prion disease on an MRI. He turned to Caroline and Kelly, who were swaying on their feet with exhaustion. His team ran extensive imaging and blood panels while they settled him. "Now I need to do the spinal tap. That will be the definitive proof," Dr. Thorne explained. "It will take a few hours to run the full PCR panel. You two," he said, pointing at them, "look like ghosts. We have a staff room upstairs, bunk beds, go rest. My assistant will fetch you the moment I have news." Seeing how drained his visitors were, he didn't take no for an answer. That evening, after a few hours of dead, dreamless sleep, he invited Caroline, Kelly, and his own dog-loving household to share a simple meal of chili and cornbread in the staff kitchen. Ash, waking from the anesthesia, was resting in his crate nearby. Dr. Thorne's calm, elderly golden retriever, Buster, patted over, sniffed the crate with polite curiosity, and then lay down with a soft woof, wagging his tail. The surprising moment of normalcy, the quiet laughter as Buster rolled over for a belly rub, felt like a balm. Late that night, Caroline lay awake in the narrow top bunk, listening to Kelly's soft breathing below. "Kel?" she whispered. "Yeah?" "I'm terrified," Caroline confessed to the darkness. I'm terrified we dragged him all the way across the country, put him through all this, just for them to tell me I was right the first time. What if I have to say goodbye to him here? So far from home, far from the desert where I promised to protect him." Kelly was quiet for a moment. "You promised to protect him," she said, her voice firm. "Fighting for him, refusing to give up, dragging him to the one place on earth that might save him. See, that is keeping the promise. Whatever happens, you already kept it." At first light, Dr. Thorne found Caroline already dressed, sitting by Ash's enclosure. "Want to take him out?" he asked. He produced a secure, padded harness. Together, they walked Ash, who was shaky but curious, just outside the clinic doors. Caroline sat with him by the lakeshore, the cool, damp air a strange new sensation for him. He breathed it in, then, growing tired, leaned his full weight against her leg. She carried him back inside, his body a familiar, precious weight. Dr. Thorne was waiting beside a humming, complex machine that held the final sample. "Coffee?" he offered. The three humans sat in hushed suspense, nursing cups of too strong coffee. Every beep from the analyzer, every whir of the centrifuge, tightened the knot in Caroline's chest. The pause after the machine finally stopped felt endless. The printer spat out a thin strip of paper covered in numbers, graphs, and codes. Dr. Thorne studied it in absolute, profound silence. Caroline watched his face. Not the paper, he didn't move. He just read, his expression unreadable. It was, Caroline thought, the longest minute of her life. Then, a slow, genuine smile spread across his face, lighting up his eyes. He turned, the paper still in his hand, and looked straight at Caroline. "Well," he said, his voice thick with satisfaction, "Ash does not have an irreversible neurological disease." Caroline's knees buckled. Kelly grabbed her arm to steady her. "The results are a perfect match," Dr. Thorne continued, his smile widening. "Systemic aspergillosis. It's a long, hard road. Make no mistake, it's going to be months of aggressive antifungal treatment. But Caroline, we can control this. We can manage this. You're not here for a goodbye. You're here for a treatment plan." The words crashed over Caroline like a wave. Treatment, not goodbye. She didn't know who she hugged first. She threw her arms around the astonished Dr. Thorne, sobbing, "Thank you," and then turned and practically fell against Ash's enclosure, pressing her forehead to the mesh. The Bobcat, feeling the shift in energy, stood up and chirped, pushing his head against the wire to meet her touch. Tears of pure, unadulterated relief, the kind that come after a battle is won, soaked her cheeks. The small Tennessee clinic, which hours before had felt like the setting for a final, tragic farewell, suddenly vibrated with gratitude and joy. They discussed treatment, follow-up schedules, and the complex logistics of his long-term care. Ash would have to stay at the Institute for a few weeks to stabilize, but then he could return to his familiar enclosure in Arizona. He would return with a real chance, a future filled with many more seasons, many more mornings spent sniffing the desert wind, and many more quiet moments with the woman who had refused to let him go. A day that had begun in the darkest sorrow had become the first radiant day of the rest of his life.